Poke the Bear is brought to you by PrizePicks.
And welcome into Poke the Bear episode 305, presented by PrizePicks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $50 back when you play just $5. I am Evan Marinofsky. That is Conor Ryan. Connor, what is up?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. Right before we started recording, we're recording this at 9:50 in the morning on Wednesday. New statement has dropped regarding Charlie McAvoy. We were going to talk about this because Frank Saravalli reported that he would miss multiple weeks due to a cleaning out an infection. Now we know more. Statement from the Boston Bruins head team physician, Dr. Peter Asnes. Charlie McAvoy sustained an injury to his right shoulder acromyoclavicular joint in Team USA's Four-Nations faceoff. That's the AC joint, correct?
I believe so.
So they shorted it down to AC. Against Finland on February 13th, which was my birthday. He underwent treatment, which was administered by Team USA's medical staff. Upon returning to Boston, he developed increasing pain, for which he was evaluated by the Boston Bruins medical staff. After undergoing x-rays, MRIs, and blood work, he was diagnosed as having an infection in his right shoulder, as well as a significant injury to his AC joint. He underwent an irrigation and debridement procedure at Mass Gen on February 18th. He remains in the hospital where he's being treated with IV antibiotics, and his condition is improving. Now, great to hear that his condition is improving, obviously, but that doesn't sound like something you're back from next week. It does not sound like something you're back from anytime soon, because you get an infection anywhere, and it's a very scary thing. I wonder, Frank Saravalli obviously reported he'd missed multiple weeks. Do they just shut him down for the year? I don't know. I mean, I'm not a doctor. Don't take medical advice from me. Please don't. But that doesn't sound good. And that doesn't sound like something he'll be back from anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty nasty 1-2 punch, right? Like, it's good that he's getting treated now, especially for the infection, which irrigation and debridement procedure does not sound very fun.
Not like a trip to the beach.
That's the equivalent of saying the word moist. I think that's the procedure. I have to undergo an irrigation and debridement procedure. Not great. Great that he's getting that treatment, but yeah, I mean, I'm not going to put a timetable on something like that with an infection. It's some pretty scary stuff. But then you add on to the fact that regardless of the recovery timeline with that, when you factor in antibiotics, everything like that, IVs, an AC joint injury, one that, I mean, the Bruins themselves say is significant. That's a pretty nasty, 1-2 punch, right? In terms of actually evaluating what his recovery timeline is. And, even if it's what Frank Saravalli reported on Tuesday night and he's week to week, well, the Bruins have 7.5, 8 weeks to go in the season. And at this point, let's say even if the Bruins wanted him back, if it's week to week, are the Bruins getting him back before the March 7th trade deadline? Probably not.
No,
right?
No,
that's the thing. So, and again, I don't know if the Bruins are in a spot where they're still really evaluating what this team is, but losing Charlie McAvoy for any sort of stretch, you saw where he was at even when he was gone, and he was kind of, out for 7 games with whatever that nagging upper body injury that he's dealing with, and that he's still dealing with. I remember, I think after one of these games before the break, someone asked him if it's still bothering him, and he was like, yeah, I'll be fine. So he's clearly not 100% anyway. And then you add in this infection, the AC joint, and how severe that is. It's not looking good, right, in terms of what his long-term outlook for this season is. And if you are the Bruins and you are weighing what to do, and you're just looking to try to, find the most realistic path moving forward, I don't know. It's unfortunate. It's bad timing where you look at Hampus Lindholm potentially being back once you get back from the break, but maybe it's just not your year. And it sure as shit feels that way, right? When you just look at everything that has kind of gone wrong, whether it's from training camp to guys underperforming to the Montgomery situation to everything in between. And this is just kind of the cherry on top, right? In terms of, and we've already talked about it, Evan, on Bruins Beat, right? Where I'm not going to begrudge anyone for taking part in the Four Nations. I don't think that's an an argument that's going to hold up much when you look at just how much excitement has been brought up from this tournament. Shit happens. It's unfortunate. Vegas is going through it right now with Shea Theodore, who they expect to be a big piece of their legitimate run this year, whereas the Bruins don't even know what exactly they are right yet going into the trade deadline. But yeah, if I'm the Bruins, I think you really do have to weigh whether it is worth bringing back a guy like McAvoy if just seems like you don't have the horses to make a significant push. It sucks, and it would validate that maybe this year's just not it, and that stinks. That means we're going to have a lot of free time in the spring, but you know what? It sure seems like it's par for the course with how this year has gone.
To me, I think this makes their decision about the deadline for them. I think your top defenseman is out, and could be for a long time. To me, it makes you think they're gonna retool. You have to. You can't that say, oh, we're gonna buy more now that Charlie McAvoy is out and hope he's back by the playoffs. Like, he needs time to rest. He needs time to recover. I think, as you said, he hasn't been 100% all year. And neither's the team. I mean, this has been an off year for the team completely. I mean, you would never pick this year if you looked at the facts of this team on a piece of paper. Statistically, what's happened, the Swayman contract, the Montgomery stuff, go on down the line. Guys having down year after down year. You'd look and say, well, it's just not your year. Maybe next year. And I think, shutting McAvoy down for the season wouldn't be the worst idea. We'll learn more about the severity of his injury over the course of time. Maybe doesn't require being shut down, but just from reading that, it does not sound good. And when it comes to the deadline and what they should be doing, I think this kind of answers their question of, hey, let's sell off a couple assets. Let's try to recoup some draft capital. Maybe next level, do you get anybody who had, do you get a roster player with some control that you can have for next season? I want them to get draft capital. But I do wonder if that's the approach. And I also wonder, we'll get into this now in terms of what to expect from them when they come back from break and what to expect over the final 8 weeks of the season. I think prior to McAvoy's injury, we would have said, look how they do in those first couple games. Then what do they do at the deadline? Then, if they sell off guys, or Merkulov and Lysell in prominent roles. Maybe that's what happens now because they're not super deep on D. So you lose McAvoy, and that's a massive blow, obviously. You are probably getting Hampus Lindholm back, but again, hasn't played in a game since November. So, that's going to take time. And after, Michael Callahan's a great piece, Parker Wotherspoon, those guys are doing their job, but those guys aren't elevating you to being a playoff team. I think if you lose McAvoy, I don't see a path forward into the playoffs. I just don't. That's your number one defenseman. That's your second highest paid guy on the team. So to me, I think it signals a retool at this deadline.
I also think if the Bruins find out that McAvoy is not available the rest of the year and they're already at 14.9% chance of making the playoffs, do you just sit Lindholm as well? If literally this is the straw that breaks the camel's back and you're like, you know what? Fuck this. We just, it's not going right. We can't stick to our game plan. We don't have the personnel in place to, if this team was to go on a run, it would all revolve around defense and goaltending, right? And if McAvoy now has this kind of freak injury with the infection that, I wonder how the Bruins kind of feel about all this as well, because, I think I saw something that Greg Wyshynski from ESPN tweeted where he was like, hearing that the Bruins are quite displeased with how all this was handled. So whether it's them, letting this thing either not be treated or missing this entirely, what gets to the point where he's got a legit infection that requires, again, sorry to say it, a debridement and irrigation process. I'm sure they are not thrilled with that. It's one thing if, Shea Theodore, smashes shoulder into the boards and that you can kind of map out what that is, right? To have McAvoy's thing get to this point where, if he was dealing with an AC joint injury, he didn't look like he was hampered by it on Saturday against Canada, where he blows up Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid. So he clearly was playing through it, and maybe he can play through the AC joint, even if it is really freaking painful. Again, these guys play through a lot, but to have it be the point where it's an infection, it has to be in the hospital dealing with that. I wouldn't be surprised the Bruins are not pleased with whoever handled that situation and let it get to that point. But I know they kind of went on a tangent there. But yeah, I do wonder if you are the Bruins and McAvoy is not going to be in the equation, you already have Lindholm, who the Bruins say he's going to be ready to go once he gets back from the break, but still has to get a few things cleared. He was skating by himself on Tuesday after practice, wasn't with the main group. He's coming back from what we assume is a pretty significant knee injury, taking a puck directly off the kneecap. Like, whatever it is, it's not great. And, maybe he can come back and play, but if you are the Bruins and you're like, you know what, if nothing's going our way and we've got 7 weeks to go until the end of the season, do we just fully go in the tank? Not outright say you're tanking, but might as well in these 7 weeks. It's going to be pretty ugly. It's not going to be great. It's going to suck. But if we deal with 7 weeks of just continuing to slide, sell off assets, get draft picks, and then also increase our odds of, instead of being the 13th overall pick, if we can end up being 8th overall or something like that, and make the most of a shitty situation, I feel like Bruins fans could deal with that situation. It's not like it's an entire year. And again, this year has not been great. This team has been not the most exciting watch, I would say, but They haven't just completely imploded. If it's 7 weeks of, this is going to be a rough watch, but it means they do get a top draft pick, they sell off assets, and they're able to kind of start clean this offseason. I do wonder if that is something that's on the table as opposed to rushing back Lindholm. Like, give him an entire spring, an entire summer to heal up, and much like the rest of the team, come back in 25-26 with a clean slate and hopefully a chance to kind of bounce back in short order here.
Yeah, I mean, I just wrote it down. Like, you'd roll with, Low-Ry Carlos, Zadorov, Peak, Wotherspoon, Callahan for the rest of the year. And that's not even taking into account, do you trade Andrew Peak at the deadline? Right. Do you listen on Brandon Carlo? That makes it much tougher because, you're definitely losing more games, losing those guys that, you can say whatever you want about those two guys this year. You're better with them in your lineup than if you have, a guy up, most likely a guy up from Providence. So it's a tough call. And I think that's what's the tough part is like, it's still, I mean, we can talk like, it's easy for us to sit here and say, you can sit Lindholm the rest of the year and shut down McAvoy. And that's the smart thing for sure. But then you and I are going to be sitting there on March 6th when they go to Carolina. And we're like, oh man, This is unwatchable. This is not watchable at all. But I agree with you. I mean, I would be completely for them trying to get a better draft position for this draft. Unfortunately, this draft is not as strong as previous drafts. So it's not like 2023 where it's like you're getting a number 1 overall pick at number 7. But still, you're getting a high-end guy, and I think that matters. What's always high-end, Connor? Our friends over at PrizePicks. They're the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long over at PrizePicks. You're going to want to hit the ice this hockey season with PrizePicks because I said the best place to win cash while watching your favorite sports. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. And PrizePicks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. So download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app, use code CLNS, get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Run that game. So what to expect from the Bruins when they return? Clearly don't expect McAvoy to be back. That's number 1. I mean, you mentioned shutting Hampus Lindholm down. I think in terms of what you're kind of expecting, I do feel bad for Joe Sacco and all this because he clearly, he waited his turn to get his chance at the head coaching job, and nothing's really gone right this year. I think they've overperformed at times, to be quite honest. When you look at the logistics of this team, they shouldn't even be near a playoff picture, and they've been in the playoffs for most of the season. In terms of what to expect, I think they're going to be probably worse. And I think, you hope to see some younger guys up. You hope to see them sell off assets and not just sit on their hands at the deadline. That's the other thing. You don't want them to just say, well, we believe in the group that's still here, and we're just going to let them try to make the playoffs. And I think that's a bad idea too. So I think what you should expect is hopefully a retool and seeing some younger guys, and we'll get them next year.
Yeah, I think you just got to embrace that this year is just not your year. You got to wave the white flag, punt, and try to make the most of it. And again, if that means moving assets, which I think you should be doing anyway, but if you have this kind of 7-week window where you're just trying to make the most of the situation, I think that involves listening in on everyone, trying to recoup, whether it's prospects, draft capital, maybe it's a hockey trade where you're bringing in a player with term that, maybe doesn't help you this year, or maybe does help you, but most importantly is a piece for the long haul moving forward. That could be a situation, and increase your chances of getting, a top 10 pick. And yeah, I agree. I think if you do have this window where it's not going your way and you gotta just kind of trudge through things, I think you need to call up the younger players and see what you got there. It's like, even if you have concerns about like how responsible they are with the puck, well, it's not going to matter if the year's shot to hell anyway. So I think you need to see what guys like Lysell and Merkulov can do down the stretch here, because then again, if you're going to this offseason with a clean slate and you're really trying to revamp this entire lineup, you got to figure out whether those guys are part of the equation or not. Again, we've said this before, but I don't want to be, going into training camp in September and we get the spiel once again about, guys like Lysell and Merkulov of like, well, they could, fill in a middle six spot. Like, well, if you aren't going to give them a chance in the no man's land of what was, March 2025, then what exactly are we doing there? Right. So I do think it's all about doing everything you can to assess what you have with this current team, and then catapult that into this summer where you really have to make some tough decisions about how you retool and revamp your roster around your franchise guys like the Pasternaks, the McAvoys, the Swaymans, what have you.
And it's not going to take much for them to get a higher draft position. I mean, you look at the East right now, they're only 5 points away from being the second worst team in the East. Now, obviously out West, you have some, doozies like San Jose, Chicago, Nashville, Seattle, Anaheim. But like the Bruins are not far from, losing a couple games and other teams, potentially winning and being in a spot where you're getting an 8th overall pick, 7th overall pick. And I know that's like loser shit to talk about. Like, it's like, oh, it's not even the deadline and they're talking about draft, where they're going to draft. That's loser stuff. And I get that. But like, this is the hand you're dealt. This is not the year to go to push all the chips to the middle of the table. And I think they know that. But it's parting with assets. It's understanding that ticket prices, are not, it's not going to be the hottest ticket in town in March and April. It's, you're not going to have playoff dates. We talk about this all the time with Don Sweeney and people say, oh, when are they going to fire Sweeney and Neely? Well, when they miss the playoffs or when they start missing the playoffs a bunch, and you don't want to kind of intentionally miss the playoffs. And then suddenly you're out of a job a year or two from now because you can't get back in. So it's not as simple as just, blow the whole thing up and hope next year is better. Like I do think there are some things you do want to, caution. You don't want to intentionally miss the playoffs or things like that, but it's just not your year. And I do think there is a path where next year starts and you're a contender again, right? Like McAvoy's healthy. Hampus Lindholm's healthy. Elias Lindholm has a full season under his belt in Boston. Nikita Zadorov has a full season under his belt in Boston. Swayman will have a full training camp. There is enough there to, and whatever they do in the offseason to think that, they should be back at it next season. But I think it's, safe to say that this season is not their season. So enough with the Bruins. Thursday, tomorrow, as we record, U.S. versus Canada.
Oh, yeah.
U.S. versus Canada. Can you believe it? We talked about the good of four nations on Bruins beat, so we're not going to dive too deep into that. Obviously, the tournament's been a great success outside of the injuries, which again, hockey's a contact sport. It's going to happen. I did see, I don't know if this was the play that did it to McAvoy, but I got a notification because I'm subscribed to Fumi on YouTube. When he posts a video, you got to watch. And he posted one of Joel Armia cross-checking McAvoy from behind into the net.
Sure feels like that's what it is.
Might have been that play at the end of that Finland game, which again, it was 5-1 at that point. Just dirty. What are your predictions for Thursday? What happens?
Man, it sucks that you have to factor in the injuries with Team USA, and I have no idea what the hell Quinn Hughes is doing, where he was practicing with Vancouver on Tuesday night in Vancouver. So I don't know how he's getting to Boston for that, whether they just think he's still too banged up, if they don't think that, it makes sense to send him across the country, or across the continent rather, to join the team, and you would miss what he'd bring. But even if like Quinn Hughes was there, you're still missing that physical force that, is what McAvoy provided. Again, it helps that I think you're getting the Tkachuk brothers back. You're getting Austin Matthews back, who, even though maybe his numbers haven't stood out defensively, he's been unbelievable for Team USA as kind of their Bergeron-esque, like, second line center, two-way guy.
I saw a tweet that was like, it was a picture of Marner, it was a picture of Matthews, and it was like, it's a choke off on Thursday night. Who could choke more? But Matthews has played pretty well.
Yeah. So it's going to be tough, right? Like, I think you look at what is more likely, whether it's can USA repeat kind of that defensive masterclass they had on Saturday, or can Canada with McDavid and McKinnon and Crosby and these guys put up 4 goals? Like, what is more likely? Probably the latter in terms of just the skill level. But I think you look at USA and the way that they can play. If they can keep the game close, and again, I think we said this on Bruins Beat. If it's 6-5, means Canada's winning. If it's 3-2, it's USA really clamping down. So it's going to be it's going to require, I think, a huge game from Connor Hellebuck along the line for him after a lot of less than ideal playoff runs with Winnipeg in the past. And I think you're going to need like some of your big guns to step up for Team USA, right? You're going to need some clutch goals. So whether that's, a guy like Jake Gensel, who's been really solid. You like to see more from a guy like Jack Hughes, right? Like a little bit more offense there. You haven't really seen it yet from him. Jack Eichel, who had a pretty quiet game on Monday against Sweden. I'd like to say that the USA has the means to gut things out, but it is going to be tough. I feel like it's going to be a coin flip. I think you look at it's tough to beat a team twice in a 5-day span. And the injuries are something you have to weigh, especially now that Cale Makar is back for Team Canada. But I feel like it's a coin flip, right? When you look at just how good both these teams are. I'll say the Americans win in overtime. How about that?
Ooh,
overtime win.
Ooh.
I'm going to have empty net. Marchand ties it up in the third period, and then Team USA wins off of a goal from Boston University's own Jack Eichel.
You don't think Cooper will have all his Lightning guys out there at the 6-on-5?
That's the most flawed line of thinking for me, is like Cooper's going to put Marchand in an actual spot like that. But I'll go 4-3 USA.
My worry is that the U.S. sort of, put so much into that game the other day against Canada. Guys getting injured, fights, put everything into that. You got to do it all again. Yeah, and that's hard to do. And they were perfect defensively. Like, that was a masterclass. If you're a coach and you're trying to put together film on, how to cover good players in the D zone, how to limit guys, how to shut them down, that would be the game you'd show. Now, you have the top of the top players out there, so it's not like that's like applicable to every team or everybody, but they played an incredibly great defensive game. I'm a little worried they blew their load before the championship game, if I can impart a little weird analogy. But I think it's a legitimate worry. I still don't see Canada winning, though. I don't think that team is very good outside of the main guys. How the hell is Jordan Binnington going to have another incredible title game at TD Garden? I just don't know. I see the U.S. winning 4-2, and the fourth goal is an empty netter. So that's what I see. I see U.S. wins 4-2. They're the better team. I see them winning. So that's what I see. Should be a good one no matter what. I would tell you not to buy tickets right now because tickets are not cheap. Oh boy, not cheap. Cheapest I saw on Tuesday was $1,400. So,
yikes!
Can't see. And what's funny is the tickets before all of this. Like, talk about an investment that would have been. I think there was a deal. We were talking about this in the locker room the other day. TD Garden put out a thing back in like October. You could go to all 3 games at the Garden for a total of like $650. And people were like, oh, no way. No way am I doing that. And now you look back and it's like $200 per game and you could potentially resell a couple of them and make a ton of money. Like, that's a pretty good deal.
Not bad.
Connor, what can the people look forward to from you over at the Globe and Boston.com?
Yeah, you can read all my stuff over at the Globe and Boston.com. We've covered every step of the way this Bruins season, this Four Nations face-off for the few days we have left during this tournament. Have it covered with everything, whether it's recaps, features, columns, breakdowns, all that good stuff. If you also want to follow me on Twitter, X, whatever it's called, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Poke the Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your week.